Okay, exactly 10 o'clock. Start. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Can I please pass on the attendance? You can just mark it, that'd be nice. All right. So what we saw in the last class is the fact that given that just a quick revision. Thank you.
Raj, just take on the books.
Yeah. So there's a fact that we should review, which is that regardless of any differences in people or differences in the various living beings, whether they are human beings or not, there is one quest which is common to all of us, which is to be independent and be happy. And really the two things are the same. They're like two words to describe. Independence means happiness. Dependence means conditional happiness sometimes. You're dependent on things and you may be happy, but sooner or later it will cause problems because no one likes to be dependent. I am very interesting to see young kids who have now started to walk a lot. And they are so hard to control. They don't want to hold their mother's hand. Absolutely not. Just yesterday I was at the gym and they have a room where these kids are with the babysitter where the fathers and mothers are working out. And so at the end of the workout, her mother took the child, and she must have been like 2 years old, maybe 1.5, 2 years old, but really running around. And as soon as she came out, she was talking to a friend of hers, how was your workout? In this meantime, and I'm actually on this elliptical machine, I'm watching this whole scene. And this young girl says, let me run. Let me be free. This is true for everyone. We want freedom. But somehow our feeling is that I am not yet free and I want to be free in the future. I know I'm not completely happy at the moment, but may I wish that conditions are put together in such a way that I will achieve a sense of happiness and freedom sometimes later. That's all we can do. And this is very reasonable too. If you tell someone that this is not correct thinking, they'll say, "Are you crazy? How are you different from me? We're all the same." So in this whole quest for freedom, there is a voice from a very good source which says there is a problem in the way you are approaching your freedom. And we were talking about this in the earlier class, which is an advanced class based on Mandukya Upanishad. We were just talking to, very quickly I'll bring the reference point. What is said there is that a person who is in the midst of dream cannot wake himself or herself out of the dream. There has to be an external entity that wakes you up. And sometimes the external entity could be going to the bathroom. So going to the bathroom is not part of the dream. It's pulling you out. Or the alarm in the morning. Or someone calling you and say, "Hey, you're getting late." So the point is that within the dream, you cannot, as a dreamer, you cannot say, "I think enough of this, now I want to wake up." It cannot be. Why that is the case, we will see later, but I can give you a hint of that. Because the dreamer, the dream character who's dreaming itself is part of the dream. So you cannot say even if you have a bad nightmare going on, you have to continue with it. An outside event has to wake you up. So the Vedantic teaching is an outside event that says your attempts to be happy with the assumption that you are basically unhappy and you will become happy later is a flawed assumption. Flawed assumption means what? What should I do then? What you need to understand is that you are unconditionally happy now, but you just don't know it. This is the model that we should follow. And this looks very strange. And we saw the objections that people have. How can I be completely? This is not my experience. How can it be contrary to my experience? So there it was pointed out. It is possible. It is possible through various means. We saw the 10th man example. That you are overlooking a certain fact about yourself which makes you not count all of your inventory correctly. That you were really the 10th man, you didn't know. And it is also possible that an experience can be without knowledge, as it is in the case of a sunrise. The sun really does not rise, but it appears to rise. So therefore, one can reconcile and at least look at this new paradigm that maybe I am okay and I just don't know it. And the reason why I started to emphasize on this as we proceed in this course of Bhagavad Gita is the following. That unless you understand this format this paradigm, the way you will shape your actions will be completely different. You see? So, if it is a paradigm that I am not happy now, but with various actions I will become happy later on, this is one kind of a paradigm, and this is one kind of an indication of the kind of actions that you will do. So there, again, I'm revising myself. There, the knowledge is secondary and the action is primary. Like we gave the example that if you wanted to go to a different city, then where to go and which direction it is the knowledge. But you haven't reached it just by saying this is, this is interesting, where this thing called Shiva Linga. You may have seen this, for those of you that are not familiar with this round stone is called Shiva Linga. So Shiva Linga or any other linga means an indicator. An indicator. Like, for example, Swami Dayananji, my teacher, used to say that. He says you are going on a freeway and suddenly it says Los Angeles. Now, you mean, is the sign Los Angeles? No. It is a sign for Los Angeles. So, you just means that yes, you are on the right path, but you haven't reached Los Angeles. In fact, it's very funny, when you reach Los Angeles, you cannot tell where you are. There's no sign. This happens, we were in India for a wedding about 6 months ago, and we were all in a bus going from New Delhi to Firozpur, where my wife's nephew was getting married. And we passed through many small towns. And we were just in a bus, just kind of looking around. And if you miss the welcome sign, which most of the Indian towns don't have, that's the expensive thing. You cannot afford to even have the sign which says welcome. You don't know where you are, which city you are in. It's the name of the street. It's the name of the house number. And sometimes the shopkeepers will have the name of Kartarpur Iron Works. Then you say, oh, this is Kartarpur. Okay. Anyway, all I wanted to say was that jnanam, knowledge in going to Los Angeles is important, but you have to get into a bus, drive a car, take a rail, something or the other. Action is a more important one. In the case of something that you already have but don't recognize it, the actions are completely different. Completely different. There you need to have some actions, but you don't really need to have the same kind of action. I'll give you one interesting example of this. This is an important example to see in the case of Vedantic. So the example is, there's several different similar examples of this. There is a person who's very poor and down and out, perhaps even homeless. And he's gone through a very rough life and he's a hard time making ends meet. Just getting some food for itself is enough. Very hard life. So one day he was sitting there, and this well-dressed person with a suit and tie, and next to him is a very well-dressed woman. They both of them approach him, and they ask him, "Are you David Pearson by any chance?" So the girl says, "Yes, what do you want from me?" He's skeptical about the whole world. "Yes, I am David Pearson." He says, sir, we'd like to have a word with you. Can you please? So he says, why are you bothering me? What do you want from me? He says, I don't want anything to you. I want to tell you something. You had an aunt living in Australia who has left an estate of $10 million to you. And we've been searching for you for the last 1 year, and finally we located you. So the first thing he says, just, I don't want any of these stupid things, just leave me. Yes, there was an aunt I remember, I don't even remember her name, but I have nothing to do with it. He says, sir, no, I'm telling you this. Please listen to me seriously. You are the only survivor. She has it in her will. There is no conflict, and I don't want anything from you. And this is the situation. So finally the fellow says, okay, so what do I need to do? He says, I'm very sorry to tell you, you have to come to Australia with us. So at first the fellow says, what? I can't believe this. Why do I? He says, we'll pay for your airfare. Everything will be taken care of. Do you mind? So first he doesn't believe. It must be some kind of a scam or something. But this is an important thing to see. The man and the woman seem like decent people. And they don't seem to have, they don't are hustlers. They're not hustlers. They are just telling me as things as they are. So he follows through. And then in the plane he said, listen, you have to go to the court, you have to identify yourself, you have to authenticate who you are, and then the money will be yours. And exactly this is what happened. They had to go through some court papers, be there in the judge, with the judge and so on. So now we can see that the paradigm of the second type is completely different. As opposed to going to Los Angeles, where karma is the important one and jnanam is the secondary one, here karma is the secondary one. There is some effort required. Yes. And part of the effort required is to convince yourself that, yes, I think this is a possibility. So here I would like to make another point, which is the word Shraddha. I made some notes on this. I hope I have it. Yeah, I did this. I did a different name, Jim Pearson. Okay. So now, the second thing I wanted to talk about is the importance of Shraddha. What does the word Shraddha mean? Which is an important element. Shraddha means a trust in this lawyer so that the reality of the $10 million can be achieved a little bit later, not here with me, but it is a verifiable truth. And sure enough, when he goes to Australia and he's given the money, it is deposited in his bank. He has not had a bank deposit for a long time. He doesn't know how to do that. He needs to have somebody which says put it in some CDs, not just in checking account. All of that has to be done. So the Shraddha means, this is an important, a trust before verifiable knowledge is called Shraddha. It is different from belief. A belief means a trust without verifiable knowledge. You just have to believe in it. Well, when will I see it? Oh, in your next life. Okay, what are you going to be there in the next life with me so I can verify whether he says no? I have my own future, you have your own future. How will I verify? We don't know. We don't know. Just believe in it. This is called belief. Shraddha means a verifiable knowledge, acquisition right here in this life, but not available at the moment. So the Shraddha means that this guy has to have some kind of a trust that this may fructify. And when it does, he can say, thank you very much, I appreciate it. As we will see much later on, there is another aspect to getting the benefits of this knowledge. So there is almost like 3 stages to it, if you want. One is the preparation for knowledge, which is called karma, which means which has tinges of Shraddha in it. He's got to make the attempt to go to Australia, put on get some new clothes, all of those kinds of things is karma. Then the second stage is that he gets the money deposited in his account, $10 million. Now, as this example shows, will his outlook towards life immediately change? No. Even if he gets $10 million deposited in the bank, what will worry him is what is happening tomorrow? Where is he going to live? All of a sudden, the implications of having unlimited funds has not been internalized by him. This is what happens sometimes, that you ask for some charitable funds. And it is said that the indication of the richness of a person is directly proportional to how much you can give and how much you can part with. So supposing there's a person who has maybe $20,000 in savings, and the person gives a charity of, say, $100. This is one case. The other person has a bank balance of $10 million, and you ask him for some funds, and he gives you $10. Which one is richer? The person who feels rich enough to part with $100 is richer. The person who feels, I don't know, maybe I need to have some money in my account, and I cannot part with it, is not as rich. When we do I intend to go through with Yoga Sutra, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras as part of this later on. Maybe not do a full analysis of it, but give you an introduction. One of the Yoga Sutras is called Pratyahara. This Pratyahara is this phenomenon. It means the ability to be open-hearted. Pratyahara means that I am comfortable and secure with who I am. If I'm insecure, my insecurity is shown up in my unwillingness to help others. Anyway, I'm just giving you a future part of it. Anyway, going back to Shraddha. So imagine the way of leading my life if I have Shraddha towards Vedanta, which says, my dear, you're making a mistake, your quest for freedom is of the second kind, not the first kind. Then, as part of that, the way I lead my life, the way my attitude is, the way I approach this is completely different. It is really in preparation of the knowledge. It's like, for example, when I knew that I had my credit card, I hadn't lost it, I had a inner smile in my mind. I was relaxed. But I still had to do some work. But that work, that attitude and so on was completely different. It had no element of anxiety, of unknowingness. This is the basic lesson of the Bhagavad Gita, that we are going to see the examples of this, the approach of Karma Yoga, the approach of Arjuna, the whole thing, everything is going to be done on this. So this is an important thing, really speaking. So this also can be looked at in the Sanskritam in the form of karma is the sadhana and knowledge is the sadhya. So karma is the actions. And if I can introduce another word to this, sadhya means, really speaking, in terms of the explanation of the Sanskrit word sadhya, means to be established. To be established. Not yet established, but means reaching a goal which hasn't been reached yet. In fact, the message of Vedanta is that the sadhya is actually siddha. Siddha means already established. The real meaning of the second type is already there but not recognized. So in that manner, it is not really sadhya. It appears to be a sadhya, but it is already siddha. But one interesting thing, as we will see later on, is that the sadhya does not become siddha until your entire understanding and your life is consistent with that. So the example is that if this person gets $10 million deposited in the bank, his attitude is not going to change overnight. It has to percolate. He knows that I've got $10 million, but quite frankly, $10 million is not something that is palpable for him, understandable for him. He doesn't understand what it can do. He's still worried about, getting sandwiches. The fact that he can get a refrigerator and stock things and live in a nice place hasn't dawned on him. Similarly here also, what will happen is that yes, you may get the knowledge that you are already free, but it hasn't quite percolated in your... So a lot of the Patanjali Sutras, which we will enhance by our own Vedantic understanding, as we will do later on, is the absorption of that knowledge. Otherwise it looks like academic. one of our students actually wrote to me recently, and she says that she has studied Vedanta and she doesn't feel it has really percolated in her life. It looks like it's an academic kind of a thing. It happens to many of us. So just by having $10 million in the bank means nothing. If your attitude is still as that of a very poor person, insecure, anxiety, full of anxiety, what difference that knowledge means? So this is what the third stage of our understanding will be, which is the taking the benefit of the knowledge. But that we will see later on. But right now, what we need to do is focus in on, if I can, sadhana. What is it that I need to? It's just like this guy who, first of all, develops enough Shraddha. So the first thing is to develop Shraddha. That means that he is not some kind of he's a trustworthy person who is out to help me. He doesn't want anything from me. This is the first thing. Then comes, okay, what do I need to do? He says, sir, you have to come to Australia. You have to get a passport. We'll arrange visa for you. We'll try to get all the things for you, but it'll be a few weeks. So he does it. He has to go to the passport office. He has to get his photograph taken. All of those kinds of things. This is the sadhana. For the Vedantic knowledge, sadhana is required. Another thing I would point out on this is, as we've already talked about it last time also, that the nature of knowledge is the eligibility for it. You may have some very subtle knowledge, as we saw E is equal to mc squared is a very subtle knowledge, not easily understandable. If the knowledge is subtle, your mind has to be appropriately subtle. Eligibility. Another example of that is that for seeing a crawling cockroach, you don't need any kind of a microscope. You can just see it by bare eyes. And even an ant you can see with the bare eyes. Small particles you can see with bare eyes. Then the particles and the bugs become smaller and smaller, invisible to the naked eye. But that doesn't mean they are not there. In fact, our teacher used to say that. He says, you have no idea how kind Ishvara is to you. So what do you mean by that? I don't understand. He says, if you could see how many bugs are crawling on your hand, you will cut off your hand. If you really saw with some kind of a microscope and all that, it is crawling with things all over all the skin and your whole body and so on. Anyway, going back to it, if you have a virus, it's very difficult to see. You require an instrument which is equally subtle to see the virus, to feel the virus. Similarly, amazing, the fact that I am totally free is not an easy thing to see. It is true, but I don't get it. Why don't I get it? Because I have to build up the eligibility. What do you mean by building up the eligibility? Sadhana. There are some things that I have to do to make my mind finer. What do you mean by making my mind finer? So there it says there are 4 things that we have to do. It's called sadhana chatushtaya. Chatushtaya means fourfold. Fourfold means 4 segmented things that we have to do for the sadhana. And this we will spend some time on today. But one thing I would say is that I think I may have even mentioned it to you, that to go into all the details about a lot of these things, which we should get that sooner or later. I would highly recommend the initial book called Tattva Viveka. So there are books available, there are talks available on it, and I think that I will write to you maybe in the next week or so, that if you have some additional time and you want to get into more details, then you should read these books, or at least listen to them from either Swami Dayanandji or from Swami Paramarthanandaji, or from any of the people. And even I have also taught these texts many times. And if you want to do that, you can even just go to the same web page and get that. And we have copies of the text available. So all these sadhana chatushtaya are given in great detail, but let me give you a summary of it here so that we know. So there are 4 things required. So let me very briefly talk about it. One is called viveka. And I would say out of all the things that you need to develop in your mind, the most important one is viveka. So I don't know if I say this later on or not. Yeah. So let me just talk a little bit about that. Viveka is a particular kind of thinking. A general thinking in any intelligent analysis is thinking. Like, any topic. Should we have Democrats as a president or a Republican? This is thoughts. This is called vichara. There are various ways to look at it, and how do we do that? Should we get out of Afghanistan or should we be there? Vichara. Should we have, what is the problem of homelessness in San Francisco? How do we solve it? Vichara. This is called general thinking. Viveka is a particular thinking within the vichara. And we're going to focus on this a little bit more today itself. That's where I will spend some more time on it. What it means is, viveka means to discriminate. This is what it means, discrimination. Discrimination means what? Discrimination means, in the final analysis, 2 things. And I have to distinguish between them, one or the other. This is called viveka. This is called viveka. And we'll spend much more time on this today, so I'll hold off on it for a minute. I'm not leaving this topic. Okay? But let me at least give you the rest of the 4-fold sadhanas that we have to develop. So first one is viveka. The second one is called Vairagya. So, Viveka in some sense means that, I'll just give you another example that just comes to my mind. You know, and you have a love for candy. This is how Ishvara has made. Everybody loves candies. Sugar is every child knows this. So what happens is that some candies are given, and one of the candy drops on the dirt. And the child, of course, doesn't know what is dirt, what is candy. It just picks it up. And his mom says, "No, you cannot eat that." So the child says, "What are you talking about?" "Why not? It's a candy. You just gave it to me." "I know I gave it to you, but it is now dirty." So now the child needs to have a viveka between a clean candy and a dirty candy. And at first it doesn't know it. But the mother has to do this repeatedly. Sometimes she has to even slap the hand of the person and say, "No." And the child has no idea why he's saying no. "I don't get it. This is a nice candy. So what? It has a couple of dirt pieces onto it." Finally, the child says, "Okay. But now it needs to have vairagya." Vairagya means the ability to not be attracted by a candy which has fallen on the ground, which is dirty. Because it is very possible you may have a 4-year-old who says, "Yes, I know that I shouldn't be eating a dirty candy, but you know what? I'm just going to eat it anyway. I'm so hungry, and I can just brush off, and my mom is not looking at me. I think I can eat it." So the vairagya means a full follow through of the principles of viveka. Not just an ability to discriminate, but to use it in my life is called vairagya. We'll talk much more about this, what it means and so on. Okay, so those are the number 2. Then there is a third segment, which are 6 of them pulled into one. And it's called sampatti. Sampatti means wealth. And sampatti here means inner wealth. What do you mean by inner wealth versus outer wealth? Outer wealth is something that you may have, you may not have. You may have money, you may not have money. You may have friends, you may not have friends. This is called outer wealth. And inner wealth is something that you are not separated from. Once you acquire it, it is yours. Money, if you acquire it, it may go away. Friendship, if you acquire, it may go away. That's the distinction between outer wealth and inner wealth. Inner wealth means it's difficult to get, but once you get, it never leaves you. This is what is called inner wealth. And actually, as we will see later, we talked about this in the tenets of Hinduism also, if you recall. The inner wealth stays with you from life to life. This is called Sukshma Sharira. So the Sthula Sharira is involved with outer wealth. Your family, your money, and so on. Oh, those are gone. You have to start all over again. Inner wealth stays with you even in your next life. That's why it is much more important. So those are the inner wealth that we are talking about. It's called Shatka Sampatti. So the Shatka Sampatti, and I won't go into all of them. I'll just very briefly mention them. It's called Shama, Dhamma, Uparama, Shraddha, Titiksha, Samadhanam. 6 of them. And Shraddha is part of that, as we talked about it earlier. So Shraddha means, because if you don't have Shraddha, so this is an interesting thing. Shraddha has 2 extremes. One is no Shraddha whatsoever. So in the going to the example of the poor person who was approached by these lawyers for going to Australia, if he doesn't have any Shraddha, he says, I don't believe, I am totally disbelieving anyone in this life. I've had such a hard life, I've been misled, I don't even want to talk to you. And he's missing an opportunity. The other extreme of Shraddha is total belief without enquiry. And this is also not good. So we also talk about to our students, please don't take my word for it. You have to, all I'm telling you is how you should think. But don't just, and this is also a problem, by the way. You find a lot of the students of Vedanta, they will say, I like what I'm hearing. I don't want to really inquire into it. It's okay, fine. This is just exactly what it is. No, it's not a question of belief. You have to look into all the aspects that I'm bringing out. So this is Shraddha. Shama means, so just very quickly, Shama means a control over the way you think, your thought process. Who is the dog and who is the tail? If your mind is the dog and you are the tail, that's not good. You need to have a certain degree of control over your mind. So this is called Shama. Dhamma means a control over your organs of action, speech, your behavior outside is called Dhamma. So, for example, one way to look at this is that suppose you are talking to someone who insults you. We always take all these extreme examples to prove. Somebody just says, you know, if I have friends like you, my life would be a mess. You are not worthy of being my friend. Something like that, some kind of an insult which really upsets you. So now your reaction can be at 2 levels. One is your mind says, what? You're crazy. And then you can actually do some actions. You can point the finger at that person and you're even worse than I am. And you can say things. So not to say things or to, worse of that is to slap someone with your hand, to kick someone or so those kinds of things, is part of Dhamma. But to even think in a very upset manner is called Shama. So part of the sadhana is to withdraw and improve the way you approach your transactions. One of the, I remember Swami Dayanand used to say that. He says, when I watch people, I find some of them are so so uncontrolled in their way. So for example, they'll be doing like this. Changing their postures, doing this, that, or the other, just means that the mind is not together. I was telling this to some of my earlier students. This is just as an example. What's the name of this English actor? I always forget his. Pete Caine is his last name. What's his first name? Huh?
Michael Caine.
Michael Caine. Thank you, Michael Caine. So I was driving, this is like about 15 years ago, and I was driving somewhere and I was listening to this National Public Radio, and there was an interview with Michael Caine. And Michael Caine was saying that how he was a very good actor and he became very quite famous. He says how my acting was taught by really some very huge, wonderful people from the English acting stage. And he says, one thing I learned very much is that the more important you are, the less your body moves. So he says, he gave an example, I remember this so well, and this was very consistent with what Swami Dayanandji had told us. This is the Shramadama example. So he says, suppose you watch this movie called The Godfather. He says, watch it, go back there, and watch the movement of the people around the Godfather. So what will happen is that somebody will come in and say, sir, so they are pointing it out, and they are kind of nervous and they're scratching. The Godfather is saying, yes, quietly sitting down, with his eyes half open. I understand. So he says, I learned that if you want to portray, this is just acting, if you want to portray an important person that everybody's looking out to, you have to lessen the amount of movement in your body. And this should be done naturally. It may have to be done deliberately at first, but actually slowly. That means your mind is not involved with trivial things of moving and this, that, or the other. You're not uncomfortable. You're just comfortable within yourself. But anyway, so this is just why I just want to give you an example. So Shramadama. Uparama exactly is a combination of these and just togetherness as a person. Shraddha we also talked about. Titiksha is an interesting one, which means just not be too upset about things that are happening to you. A very good example was the hot weather in the last few days. It was hot. It was hot. But as a person who says, oh my gosh, 95? I cannot believe it. It is so hot. Your whole day is spent in simply complaining about 95. Do you know something? Let me tell you something. If you are in New Delhi, it's only 95. No, I'm not. I'm telling you. It was 119 for several weeks. And there are people who not only cannot afford air conditioning, they cannot afford a fan. So it's really just a matter of, they cannot afford to be just upset. It's not as though they don't, they might get something and then do like this. That's okay. But they're not totally involved with it. So just get with it. It'll go away. Today the weather is already okay. So this is called titiksha. Samadhanam means, really this is so uparama and samadhanam are similar. There are some small differences. It just means the ability to focus and to do what you really want to look at rather than just be upset about nonsensical things. Is samadhanam. Anyway, so these are the 6 inner wealth. Then the last one is mumukshutvam. So mumukshutvam means a really strong desire to follow through. To follow through. And so not be casual about it. Oh, I'm doing this because it seems like fun. But to really, I'll give you one interesting example. Swami Dayanandji once gave this, my teacher gave this example. So he says, one time there was a person somewhere in the East Coast who said, Swamiji, we love what you do, your teaching and so on. Please come and give us some talks in my local town, and I will arrange for it. So Swamiji said, I'm very busy, I'm not sure if I can do it. No, Swamiji, you must come, this is extremely important to us. Please, 3 talks, okay, you just come for 3 talks. So he says, I'd love to hear you, please come. Swamiji says, okay, you make the arrangements, I'll come. So Swamiji started the talks, he went there, and on the first day the person says, sir, I have to tell you this, I'm going to miss your first class. We say, okay, but why? He says, there's a very important, I had already given word to someone else before, I didn't realize this, so, but I will talk to somebody about taking notes. So Swamiji says, this is a lack of mukshutva. You're just doing it because you want to do it, but why would you've been asking me to come, and you are just going to, I don't know what he was doing, it's some party or so, I don't know what it was doing. He missed the first class. There's only 3 classes. If you miss the first class, you cannot follow through the other 2. Swamiji says, that is amazing. How can people do that? Either you say, forget it, I'm not interested. If you are interested, another example I would give is, a woman had 2 or 3 kids, and they're all playing and so on, and she's cooking for them dinner. Okay? And the dinner is at 5 o'clock, 5:30, and it's about 4 o'clock or so. And the kids are playing and so on. So one of the kids comes to the mom and says, Mom, I can't wait until dinner time. Can you give me something? She says, no, just go away. Because, it's only an hour from now, and I don't want to give you snacks and so on and so forth. Please go away. So the child goes away. Comes back after 2 minutes and says, Mom, I am so hungry, I cannot wait. Please. So the mom says, okay. Do not tell the other kids. Okay? You sit here and you take this biscuit, and just eat it quickly. But do not tell everybody else, because they'll all come in and swarm me, and then so on. It means that the person was so hungry that even after admonitions by the mother to wait, it could not wait. And so this is called mumukshutva, means don't just have a casual approach toward this. If it doesn't make sense, then it's fine. Then go away, do something else. But if it does make sense, then follow through with it. And if you don't, that means you're not hungry enough. You don't understand the issues. This is the 4th sadhana that is talked about. Anyway, that's all I want to talk about there. 11 o'clock, I still have at least 15-20 minutes more. Okay. Now let's go to the main topic today, which is the nature of viveka. And I would say this, that really for the rest of this course, and if you want to have, you're serious about it for the rest of your life, developing finer and finer viveka should be the top of your list. This is the most important. These other things will come as a result of viveka. If we don't have viveka, then the other things are forced and they will not have the meaning. So this, I just wanted to tell you about the importance of viveka. So now let us look at a little bit more into what it means. Eventually, for the students of Vedanta, what it will boil down to is a complete understanding on what is called ontology. Ontology is the science of distinguishing various levels of reality. The analysis of reality is called ontology in general. And viveka means the discrimination, the ability to discriminate between levels of reality. And levels of reality means the levels of truth, as we will see. This is the main focus, that is the sadhana. This is what we have to do. This is where we have to develop the eligibility for jnanam, for knowledge. Okay? So, let's carry it further. It means to distinguish between satyam and mithya. Now we saw the examples from last week. We saw the definition of mithya. So the mithya is neither satyam nor lack of satyam, something in between. And so, for example, the ornaments of gold are mithya. So mithya means that it doesn't have its, I can't even remember where I went. Did I go through the examples of this? I think I did, on what the mithya is and so on. We will go back to it again. I just want to continue. So, one thing I would say to you is that when you think of mithya, don't think of it as some abstract phenomena. Think of it as a lower form of reality. And what we mean by lower form of reality, I will now get into more. But to be able to distinguish between a lower form of reality and a higher form of reality is viveka. And the lack of viveka causes all kinds of problems in my life that I'm not even aware of. I cannot distinguish between them. And as a result, I stub my toes all my life. And if I develop it, so in the example of the candy dropping, it's very possible that that person may pick up some bugs from the dirt and suffer from it. So the ability to have a clean food is an important viveka. Anyway, so that's what we need to do. So now I'm going to give you in the next 15 minutes some important examples of what we mean by viveka. Distinguishing between a lower form of reality and a higher form of reality, what does it mean? In our life, I'll give you some examples. I already give you the one example from last class. If you recall, a mother, and even today, a mother that has a 3-year-old and a 9-year-old, and she plays a battered wife in a play, and the 3-year-old does not have viveka between a play and a non-play, hates to see her mother being hurt like that, and she rushes over and spoils the play because of the lack of viveka. Completely spoils it. Whereas the 9-year-old has the same experience, but has viveka between the lower level of reality that it's a play and a higher level of reality that it is just not true. And she is going to be okay. She is not really hurt, and if she gets a couple of slaps and so on and so forth, no big deal. She herself wants it, and she'll be okay, and she laughs about it. This is one example of viveka. Let's take another example. Going to a movie and going to a movie which is tearful movie, where the emotions of sadness comes out, and tears are rolling down, is another form. And the interesting thing is, while your tears are going down, you're eating popcorn. It's a great example. In fact, this is discussed in the Vedantic teaching, because there is an objection. The objection is, wait a second, you're telling me that there is a certain falseness towards the world? So we said, yes, that's what we're telling you. He says, no, I don't believe it, because anything which is false doesn't upset me. So the corollary is, if something upsets me, it must be real. So don't tell me this is unreal. To which we say, that's not true. You willingly go to a tearful movie, which you know is not true, and tears well up in your eyes, so much so that you actually have some handkerchief to wipe it off. And you know it's not true, but it has the ability to overwhelm you. Yeah, I know. My wife sometimes, she goes to the movies and I'm very bad at it. Because to me, the whole world is looking like a movie. So another movie in the middle of a movie I don't need to do all of that. So she was always complaining that, other husbands go, how come you don't come with me? And this, that, all, we have this constant arguments. So what will happen is that actually once in a while I go to a movie where it really just captures me. I go to historical movies, like this movie about Ramanujam. Something, I forget about that. It was very captivating.
Infinity or something.
Huh?
Infinity or something?
Yeah, something like that. The Man Who Knew Infinity. Then there was another one where this English guy developed this Turing machine.
That's right.
He was gay, and so he was imprisoned for a while and so on. But he actually stopped Germany from winning the war because he could figure out what their scheme was. Enjoyed that movie. So I do go to once in a while. But here's what happens. If I'm going to a movie, and if no, those days are gone when you can take your cell phone out and look at it, and then everybody will be. But once in a while I would look at my watch to see how much time has passed. And my wife looks at me and says, "Oh my God. Watch the movie." But I am just thinking, okay, another half hour left, I think it will be done. So this is the situation. You can be influenced by a movie and be enjoying it or suffer from it or whatever. Doesn't have to be true. This is exactly what happens in our life. Things bother us, and eventually, I'm just giving you the cheat sheet. You will begin to see your life as a movie. And why you will see it? Because you will discover a higher reality which is better than a movie. This is part of the Viveka. So this is example number 2. Third example, one that we will spend a lot of time on, is to be able to distinguish between yourself and your reflection in a reflecting media, like a mirror, or better still, a moving body of water. A body of water which is capable of moving, not a moving body of water. There, to distinguish between the reflection and yourself also requires a certain viveka, which is not necessarily true. So they say this, that animals whose minds are not as well developed as human beings get confused in looking at themselves in the mirror. And they also say that the mind of a 2-year-old, certainly less than that, but even a 2 or some age, gets very confused. So don't show, in fact, if you ever do this, show a mirror to a child and there is a face of puzzlement in their face. They don't know what to do. Who is this? Is it a different person or me? Lack of viveka. Anyway, we'll come to this. Lots of implications of this. This reflection is a very important aspect of the sadhana for Vedanta. So we'll go into that in more detail. And the one which you are very familiar with is that you can either have what is called a gold buddhi. Buddhi means a sense, a understanding, a thinking. You can either have a gold buddhi or an ornament buddhi. Ornament buddhi means that you're going into form and beauty with no real substance. Gold buddhi means your thinking is based on how substantive it is. How much does it cost? What is the nature of the... And so here the mithya and satyam are interchanged because the luster of gold is the luster of ornaments. The weight of the gold is the weight of the ornament. The look of the gold is the look of the ornament. Everything is borrowed from the gold. But yet, as we were discussing, I think a young woman who is getting married, and this is an Indian example, loves the ornamentation. She is not worried about the weight of the gold, how much does it cost, that's up to the parents. But she is so involved. This is what is called an ornament buddhi. So this in a way is a lack of viveka. As she grows up and she is less accustomed to this, to the style and the fashion, and she has to now give the gold to her daughter, that ornament buddhi will turn into gold buddhi. Same thing. It's not as though they are two different objects. Is another form of viveka. Let's go to the next one. The distinction between a dream and the waking state. At a certain level, the dream state is, thank you. Oh, it's frozen. Why is that? Aha. It wasn't there. Has it broken? Let me see. Oops. No, it's still on. So I don't know. I have no idea why it doesn't appear to be. Anyway, so just take it from me. We're almost done anyway. So the next one is the dream state and the waking state. Because all I wanted to give you were an example of a lower level of reality and a higher level of reality. We'll talk about the distinctions later. Another one is the sun rising and not rising. Also requires a certain viveka. This is an important example, which is, and I probably will not have enough time to go into this, so I think I'll do this later on, is a distinction between what appears to be a snake, moving snake, is really just a rope with inadequate light to show on it. The rope and the snake. Very important example, and we will go into this in much more detail later on. Another form of viveka. Another one, this is a very kind of practical one in our life, is the distinction between love and attachment. This is a very high level of viveka. We think that attachment means love. Attachment means be worried about someone. Because you're only worried about things that you're attached to. You're not worried about, right now at the moment, there's probably, I would say, 20 people who are on their way to the hospital, right in San Jose, in this area. Probably more than that. But you're not worried about them. But if you were to find out, you get a message that a loved one is going to the hospital, you'll probably walk out right now and say, listen, Vedanta will come later on. I want to find out, because you're worried about that person. Then there is a distinction between love and attachment. What is love and what is attachment? This we will see I won't spend any time today, we'll look at it later on. But this is also an example of viveka. Then the ninth one is the viveka between general action called karma and karma yoga, which is the utility of the karma to improve your sadhana. It is just a general action that we do in the pursuit of future results versus the actions that we do that are particularly useful in me to gain knowledge. This is the distinction between karma and karma yoga. And lastly, which will be the big viveka, will be between Atma means myself, I. Atma means I. It has a kind of a high surrounding word, Atma. It means I. And Anatma, which means not I. Distinction between viveka, between I and not I. That is what we will eventually graduate to. It's really frozen. Anyway, I didn't want to distract myself. So that is the big viveka. In the meantime, examples of viveka between distinguishing between relatively lower forms of reality and a relatively higher form of reality constitutes the definition of viveka. And the necessity of viveka in the way we approach our lives is very crucial to the understanding of the Atma and Anatma Viveka. So with that, I will stop the class and leave any time for questions that you may have, and we will pick it up next time. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha Hari Om. Any questions that you may have about today's class? Yes?
What's the difference between Shama and Viveka?
The Shama is just means your ability to control your emotions. Viveka is a discriminative knowledge between your approach to two things that look alike but they are not.
You were talking about the book, is it Tattva Bodha or Tattva Viveka?
Tattva Bodha. Tattva Bodha, sorry. Sorry. I might have said Tattva Viveka, but Tattva Bodha. Did you have a question? Oh, no. No, I thought you had me. Yeah.
Yeah, you were talking about Diksha. You said not to be very upset with
Not to be not to be pushed out of shape. So focused on that you're not doing anything else. This too shall pass kind of a thing doesn't make sense to you. To a person, you're so focused on it. It's hard for everybody, but just go on with your life. And it's really a matter of, how you just approach it. If you just ignore it to a certain extent, it will go away, but it will still be hot, but it's not capturing you as much as,
So basically, it's like don't get worked up on every.
Yes, quite right.
Okay.
Right,
Every situation.
yes.
Is the Titiksha synonymous with Sahan Shakti?
Yeah, Sahan Shakti is the Hindi for it. Yeah, it is the same thing. Ability to withstand problems. Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah.
What's pratyahara?
Sorry?
Pratyahara.
Pratyahara means a lack of unnecessary hoarding beyond the utility of what you need. So just be so involved in accumulating, which doesn't make any sense. Just keep on getting more and more money, more and more things. Having 6 pairs of shoes instead of 2 pairs of shoes. Those kinds of things. We'll go into that in more detail, but that's what it means. Yeah.
So is it same with aparigraha?
Yes, aparigraha is very similar to pratyahara. Yes, very much so. Yeah, 2 words to describe the same. Yeah. So, couple of just something, and you can still have time for questions, but I made a change in the way we would, I would still like to have a one-on-one with each one of you, honestly. That's one of the things I'd like to do, other than people that have been with me for a while. Because I've already done about 5, 6 of them. It's very good to get to know each one of you. So I made a change. In addition to the time right after the class, as we do, for those of you that just want to have a quick telephone one-on-one, then I made a change from nighttime to daytime, because many of the people thought it was only at daytime, because I'm still okay at 9 o'clock on Wednesday night, but the other time zones it was too late for them. So I've changed it to 9 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. on Wednesday a.m. rather than p.m. So if you're okay with it, you can just give me a call and I will love to talk to you. But the way to do that is, I think one of the people was having some difficulty in how to go that. So you go to the main website, arshavidyacenter.org. Let me ask you, has anybody not gone to it yet? You're not admitting. Anyway, just go to arshavidyacenter.org, and then on the main home page, on the right-hand side, it says one-on-one with Vijay. Okay, and so it says here. So click on the here. That takes you to a spreadsheet, which is a Google Doc, a Google spreadsheet. And so just put down your name on it, and it automatically, I will also see it. So it's a common doc for that. So it's easy enough to do that. So that's one thing. What else? Yeah.
Why we have to go one-to-one basis?
You don't have to, but I'd like to just know, where you are, and if I can give you some advice in terms of study and so on and so forth. That's all.
But that is not mandatory.
No, it's not mandatory,
Okay, thank you.
no. Okay, very good, we'll see you next week.